Hey everyone, this is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today as I take a deeper look into Season 1, Episode 2 of the Braxton family. So I'm going to start out by saying that I am happy that the Braxtons decided to film again, and initially I was like, I don't know, because the last version of this show ended in a disaster, and I think it exacerbated long-standing issues that the sisters could not resolve. But after watching this episode, I think it was a good idea for them to come back because now they'll have an opportunity and an incentive to do whatever they think they need to do to bring peace, order, and stability into their lives, and they can get paid for it. So the episode continues with the grief counseling session, and Trina pours her heart out, sharing how watching Tracy wither away from cancer is basically now haunting her, and she appears to be suffering from PTSD as a result. I mean, it's heartbreaking and traumatizing for anybody to watch a strong, vibrant, happy person like Tracy slowly wither away and disappear into death. And they started showing a montage or clips of Tracy while she was at home. I think she was in hospice care at home. And it looked like she lost her ability to speak towards the end, which was kind of poetic or ironic, considering that for many years she felt silenced and shut out from her sisters because she got pregnant and had to leave the girl group, and because she was the closest to their father after their parents divorced. At one point during the session, which not only included the 4 remaining sisters, but Miss Evelyn was there, Michael, the father, was there, and little Kevin, Tracy's son, was there. And at some point, the police arrived at Kevin's house, little Kevin's house, and they interrupted the session. And, I don't know if he got arrested or not, but during that confusion, Tamar got triggered because she felt like she was the only sister out of the loop about what was going on with little Kevin. And Trina correctly told Tamar that their therapy session was not a place for Tamar to express her grievances about not knowing little Kevin's business. So it wasn't a time or a place to be upset about not knowing what was going on with him, because he may not have wanted her to know, and it was his business to tell. Tawanda was trying to protect little Kevin by not putting him on blast on TV, but all Tamar seemed to care about was people keeping secrets from her. And as I thought about it a little bit more, I think she got triggered about the idea of being, quote, left out, because she knows how the family treats people who get, quote, left out. And this is what happened with Tracy when she left the group. Miss Evelyn, their mother, she kind of runs the family like a cult. If you're not following all of the rules, mandates, dictates that she establishes, then you're scapegoated or treated like the black sheep. And I think because it is brainwashing, some of the sisters, if not all of them, they subconsciously are anxious about being put in, quote, time out by the group, because that's like being excommunicated or ostracized, which is how it usually goes in really close-knit families, communities, cults, and churches. But while the Braxtons don't want to be left out, quote unquote, right? Being on the inside of that cult is also difficult because it's suffocating. The sisters don't have an individual identity. And I'll delve into this a little bit further. So during the session, Tony said that she self-soothes by reminiscing about the days before she became famous, because she was so young, she had so much hope and optimism and enthusiasm about the future. And I kind of knew where she was going with that before she said it. I knew what she was going to say before she said it, which is very sad because for me, it sounds like she believes her best days are behind her, which may or may not be the case, because I remember about 12 years ago, Tony was saying that she was going to retire from music, and she was just tired of the rat race of the industry and feeling like a failure and so on and so forth. And since then, she's put out a couple of albums that were really successful. She's won another Grammy, and she starred in a hit reality show. And even their mother, Miss Evelyn, started a whole new career in her 60s as a reality TV personality. So it ain't really over until it's over. But I think that Tony wants to go back to a time when Tracy was alive and healthy. She didn't have any lupus. She wasn't a divorcee. She didn't have any kids. Like, she was young and free. And now she's in her 50s, and Tony has severe health issues. Over the past 15 years, she's gone through a divorce, another bankruptcy, multiple health crises. She's lost her sister. She's aging in an industry that values youth. I mean, I think watching Tracy die before her forced Tony to face her own mortality in sharp relief. I think Tracy's long death, because Tracy didn't die unexpectedly in a car accident or in her sleep, right? it took her a couple years to pass away. And watching that whole process forced Tony and even the other sisters to face their deepest fears about what death looks like, how it feels, and how it will affect her children, who gratefully are now young adults. They're not dependent on her. They're not minors in a sense. They may still be dependent on her financially, but they're not minors. So I'm not saying that it'll be easier because they're older, but at least she got to see them grow up, right? So I do also believe that Tony feels guilty because she always felt responsible to take care of her family in some way, and she couldn't save Tracy. I think she may also feel a little guilty about wallowing in self-pity because she has lupus, and then her sister dies before her. Now I'm going to say this as respectfully as possible, okay? I think Tony made lupus such a significant part of her identity because it gave her permission to put her needs first and her health first in a way that she was not allowed to by her mother and the expectations that she and the family put on her. I think Tony is very afraid, but also angry about having lupus for good reason. But I think she talks about it a lot to remind herself and her family that she's not invincible, that she needs support too, and the disease is a safe way for her to put some real estate between herself and the family. Because it seems like the family has an issue with boundaries, right? And I think that having lupus is a safe way, and it sounds weird to say this, but psychologically it's a safe way for Tony to be an individual and to ask for her boundaries to be respected, because otherwise people like Miss Evelyn and even Tamar maybe will keep putting demands on Tony that are excessive, burdensome, inconvenient, and stressful. So during the session, Tony said that she and her siblings were expected to put each other over their own children and husbands, which is another way of saying that Miss Evelyn wanted her children to put their mother's needs before their own families and children. Miss Evelyn did not want to be forgotten once the ladies grew up and got married. This whole family dynamic was cultivated for Miss Evelyn's benefit, not for the sisters necessarily. And I'm going to discuss Miss Evelyn a little bit later. So towards the end of the session, Tawana and Tamar kind of got into it because Trina mentioned how close they were before Tracy died. But since her death, the family kind of isolated themselves from each other because Tracy was the glue that kept them together for better or worse. And unfortunately, I think that back in the day, before the show started, Tracy being the scapegoat helped to forge the bond with the other four sisters and Miss Evelyn. I think they bonded over Tracy being the black sheep and ostracized and kicked out of the cult, which hurt Tracy very badly, and she was bitter about it, but also helpless to fix anything. You know, I'll just say this. I think subconsciously Tracy may have gotten pregnant to escape the cult of their mother, which was, her way of rebelling against the strict religious upbringing and the demands of her mother. Tracy was an Aries, and Miss Evelyn is a Capricorn. In astrology, that represents a square, which usually manifests as some sort of ego clash, because the things that one person wants may be in direct conflict with how the other person wants to express themselves. So Miss Evelyn wanted a very strict religious family girl group where she had control over all the girls, and Tracy may have wanted to be an individual with her own life, her own family, her own personality, her own identity. She wanted that, but her identity was in conflict with what Miss Evelyn wanted for all her daughters. So Miss Evelyn kind of wanted all the girls to be one group, and Tracy wanted to assert her individuality. And I kind of sort of think that low key, she may have subconsciously got pregnant just to be able to break out of that cult. Arians don't do well under that type of environment where they're constantly being controlled and confined by traditional expectations. They want to do things their own way. That doesn't mean Tracy was bad, but it means that she was the first one to try to break free from the programming and conditioning that Miss Evelyn inflicted upon her daughters. So Tracy, the Aries child, was the only daughter who chose her daddy's side. She broke rank, and she was punished for it, first by her mother and then by her other sisters who followed suit. So during the session, Tamar said that when she reaches out to her sisters, she's ignored, and Trina corrected her and said that she answers the phone and visits Tamar 90% of the time that she asks to see her. So basically, Tamar tried to make Trina and Tony feel responsible for how Tawanda made her feel, just like Miss Evelyn made Tony feel responsible for Babyface and L.A. Reid choosing her as a solo act, right? Instead of her being a part of a girl group, Tony was chosen to be a separate artist. And, Miss Evelyn also could have made Tracy feel responsible for protecting her mother's feelings at the expense of her relationship with her father after the divorce. So Miss Evelyn was more so concerned about, I don't want to say weaponizing all the children against their father, but it seemed like that's what she wanted, and she punished Tracy for that, either subconsciously or the way she spoke to her and about her. And Tracy said that, so I'm going to have to, believe that's the way that she felt, because that's what actually happened. So there's a lot of projection and transference going on in the family, which is why they don't know how to communicate, because they were taught to deflect and project. Just like Miss Evelyn deflects and projects her anger onto her ex-husband instead of taking some responsibility for the choices she made in her life. Tamar was mad about Tawanda putting up strong boundaries and refusing to deal with Tamar's hysterics and shenanigans. And by the way, I really liked how Tawanda expressed how she was able to cope with Tracy's death. I share the same perspective. In ancient and traditional cultures, death was celebrated as the liberation of the soul from the body's prison. When Black and Indigenous people became Westernized and Christianized, they kind of equated death with the European concept of finality, loss, fear, darkness, and punishment, when it's the exact damn opposite. The fear of hellfire and brimstone was instilled in Indigenous people to indoctrinate them into Christianity. It was a successful form of brainwashing through fear-mongering. So kudos to Tawanda for having a healthy perspective about death. Miss Evelyn shared the same sentiments, because I'm sure at her age, she's 70-something years old. She's experienced a lot of death already. She's facing death herself. It is what it is. Again, she's in her 70s. I think all the sisters and Miss Evelyn are devastated about Tracy's death, even though they're not as hysterical as Trina was about it. I don't want people to say, well, Tony or Tawanda or Tamar, they're not crying as hard as Trina, so they don't care as much. I don't think that would be fair to say. Everybody expresses pain and grief differently. So back to Tawanda and Tamar. Tawanda has no patience for Tamar's childish, attention-seeking behavior. And I did notice that Trina's a Sagittarius, Tawanda's a Virgo, and Tamar's a Pisces. And this represents a T-square in astrology, which also represents conflict, but provides opportunities for the people within the T-square to learn from each other. Tawanda's more objective, rational, logical, and practical than Tamar. And so when she corrects Tamar, Tamar feels triggered because she feels belittled by Tawanda's ability to manage her emotions and to check her for acting like a petulant child. We can see the stark difference between the analytical, practical nature of Virgo and the emotional, subjective, expressive nature of the Piscean. I think Tawanda's mental disposition is the reason she was chosen to be little Kevin's godmother, if I remember correctly. Because Tawanda knows how to manage her emotions better than most, if not all, of her sisters. We've seen her lose her temper a couple times, which is normal, but that's what happens when you have a T-square. We have to fight with ourselves or the people around us in order to resolve those internal or external conflicts. I'll do an astrological deep dive for the Braxton sisters for my Stargazer members in the near future. I'm working on a Lark Voorhees and Michael Jackson presentation, which should be coming up within the next week, so I don't have as much time to focus on that right now. Essentially, I think Tamar wanted Tawanda's attention. And then when Tawanda gave her the attention she was looking for, all of a sudden Tamar started acting like Tawanda was doing too much, that it wasn't a big deal, that she didn't want to talk about it anymore, right? And Tawanda does not have time for that cat and mouse game. I'm going to say something about you that's not true, or I'm going to project something onto you to trigger you, to get you to react and respond in a way that I want. And now it's like forcing some sort of energy exchange by way of interaction and engagement and responding to unfounded claims. So I'm going to be as ridiculous as possible to get you to respond to me, because I can't get your attention any other way. After watching Tawanda and Tamar squabble, I guess, Miss Evelyn had another outburst and gave us this soliloquy about the sisters fighting and not being able to get along and acting like they hate each other. It sounded like a speech. She said she's been talking to him for years and she's tired of it, which brings me to the point of this commentary. I think the Braxton sisters can't get along because their mother uses them for not just emotional validation, but for her own ego validation. I suspect that Miss Evelyn is living vicariously through her daughters, and she may still have bitter resentment towards her ex-husband to this day, because she may feel like she sacrificed her goals and dreams to be his wife and the mother of his children. Miss Evelyn is a boomer, which means she has Pluto and Leo. The Pluto and Leo generation is largely self-interested, as Leo is a sign of the individual, the celebrity, the star of the show that is entitled to attention just because they exist. However, Miss Evelyn is a Capricorn sun, and the Capricorn Cancer polarity represents culture, family, parentage, community, legacy, society, tradition, etc. So Miss Evelyn, like many Capricorns and Cancers, feels validated and affirmed by her role as the matriarch or the patriarch. Capricorn represents the patriarch of the family, and Cancer represents the matriarch. I think Miss Evelyn, played both roles. She's very strong-willed. But with the Pluto and Leo in conjunction to her sun, Miss Evelyn may have been using her children and her role as their mother. And I think she had a very prominent role in the church. She may have been the first lady if she was married to the pastor of the church. I would think so. I don't know much about church culture and politics because I wasn't raised in a church, but she may have had a very prominent position within that organization. And so when her husband cheated and had a long affair with one of the members of the congregation, she was not only humiliated, but she lost her status and her position, right? I think her position as a Braxton matriarch, it gave her some ego validation, and she wanted to be rewarded with status and even fame for being the mother of the Braxtons. And I think this started way back when they were a girl group. I believe that one of the reasons Miss Braxton is still bitter about her divorce is because she was stripped of the title of being the wife of a pastor. You know, she was this head matriarch of his big girl group. Like, she made many sacrifices for her family, as many Cancers and Capricorns are known to do, but she wanted to be rewarded. It wasn't just by sheer obligation or altruism. I'm not saying she didn't enjoy being a mother. I'm not saying that at all. But I think because of this Pluto-Leo configuration, she wanted to be rewarded or acknowledged with status, fame, or money for being this matriarchal figure. It's almost like being a Kris Jenner, who also is a boomer, born with Pluto and Leo. So I think that the dynamic that Miss Evelyn cultivated with her children was to ensure that she remained the star of their lives, in a sense. She remained relevant, and by proxy, garner some of the celebrity she pushed them to have. So she conditioned her children, just as she conditioned herself, to sacrifice their individualities for the sake of the cult that she was in charge of. But as the Braxton children got older, they were changing due to maturity, children, personal experiences, divorces, health changes, whatever. But in spite of their personal changes, Miss Evelyn needed her children to operate within that same paradigm and that same programming and conditioning that they did as children, because her role as their mother is the source of her identity and validation. So she needs them to stay the same to preserve her identity and her legacy. So if the children don't grow up, I will always be seen as Miss Evelyn, the matriarch of the family, right? So she wants to keep the same control and power over them as she did when they were younger, because having control and power over them was a source of her identity. It gave her validation. She could have built some sort of reputation for being the matriarch of the family. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Miss Evelyn had dreams of being famous in her own right, like many boomers did. But as a Capricorn who was born in the 1940s in the Black community, Miss Evelyn may have felt obligated to uphold the tradition of being a wife and mother at the expense of her personal dreams and aspirations, hence the bitterness towards her ex-husband. She sacrificed all that for him while he was laying it low and spreading it wide with other women. Yes, I think Miss Evelyn loves being a mother, but only if she gets power and attention and validation and praise for doing so. I mean, when you see the opening credits for the show, Miss Evelyn looks like one of the sisters, which I'm sure makes her feel flattered because boomers don't want to get old. So anyway, Neptune in Pisces has been breaking this family down since 2011. The foundations and structures that were built to protect the family unit are being dissolved by divorce, death, and disease. The Braxton sisters are trying to maintain the old family dynamic and that old paradigm while they are changing individually. They need time to separate themselves from each other to discover who they truly are without the family unit. And on a side note, I'm going to say this. I don't believe that a strong matriarch is necessarily a bad thing. I think we need more strong matriarchs and patriarchs in the Black community. We don't need a bunch of sexy Reds and Jaden Smiths and Marcus Jordans running around. We need strong families so that we can have strong communities and thus strong economies and political power. Right now, Black people fight harder for the Democratic Party than they do for their own families. We brag about wearing name brands or brand names more than we brag about our family names. This is a problem. So while I do think Miss Evelyn is the reason her family is dysfunctional, I respect the fact that she is trying to hold the family together, which used to be the norm in the Black community back in the day, before we sold out to the Democratic Party. And yes, family is political. If you have no family, you have no culture. If you have no culture, you have no power, because as a collective tribe or race, you have no rules, no values, no principles, no code of conduct. So you're like a bunch of barbarians, a bunch of vandals, a bunch of savages. That's how the world sees you if you have no culture. So anything goes. Now we have Sexy Red and Megan Thee Stallion as the face of our culture, two promiscuous women who are chosen to represent Black women in front of the whole world. And why is that? Because in generations past, the matriarchs and patriarchs of our community, the boomer generation, Generation Jones, even Gen X, they chose their individual needs, personal freedom, drugs, alcohol, and other frivolities over the responsibility of creating, maintaining, and sustaining a family and a community. So being an individual and having individual freedom is overrated if you have no tribe, if you have no family, if you have no culture. This is one of the reasons why Black Americans lost political power. Even though we are earning more money and have more degrees, we lost political power because we went from a collectivist culture, Cancer, Capricorn, to an individualistic culture, Leo, Aquarius. I don't care how much freedom you have, as long as you being free doesn't denigrate the family name and reputation. And we forgot about those principles. So being part of a cult or culture is a double-edged sword. Now, one more thing I'm going to say about astrology really quickly. We're entering the age of Pluto in Aquarius, or the era of Pluto in Aquarius. And the Pluto in Aquarius era will usher in many things. But one of the significant things that we're seeing now is sort of like putting scarlet letters on people, or branding them publicly and shaming people publicly for their personal indiscretions. I'm seeing a lot of that now. And that is something that's going to be perpetuated as Pluto in Aquarius progresses, because Pluto in Aquarius makes a square to Pluto in Scorpio, the sign of privacy, intimacy, betrayal, secrets, and so on. So when you have this square, people are going to weaponize your secrets and your private affairs against you to gain power over you and to sort of malign you and ostracize you from the collective Aquarius, right? So we have to be very careful about that, about digging into people's personal business to find out what happened to them 25, 30, 40 years ago, like Evelyn and Zada try to do with Jackie Christie. You have people doxing people. You have people like Tasha K, just doing all of that. We have to be very careful, because that sickle can also be a boomerang. So we have to be careful about weaponizing people's secrets against them to make everybody hate them. That is going to be a very nasty manifestation of the Pluto and Aquarius transit. So anyway, right now, the Braxton sisters are trying to put on clothes that no longer fit in an attempt to sustain the same family dynamic that they had when they were children, because their mother, Miss Evelyn, uses their family unit for validation, for a sense of purpose, and for her own ego gratification. And Miss Evelyn needs to feel like she built a legacy and a name for herself through her children. This is the Capricorn, Leo in conjunction. So yes, Miss Evelyn has helped to turn the Braxton name into a brand and a legacy, but now her middle-aged children feel lost and confused about how to move forward individually and as a family, because Tracy's gone. They can't bounce off her energy anymore. So they need time to collect themselves, to figure things out, and then maybe they can meet somewhere in the middle from a healthier space. But I do also notice that when one sister pulls away, the others feel triggered or abandoned, as if they're all connected to marionette lines, like they're all puppets. So when Tawanda moves her arm, Trina's leg moves. When Tony raises her hand, Tamar's elbow moves, right? And I'm not speaking literally, I'm speaking figuratively here. So this is really complex conditioning and codependency. You can still be a family unit with separate lives and identities, but it seems like they have been brainwashed to keep each other in line. This is extremely, I don't want to say toxic, but it's very complicated. They have been brainwashed and programmed to maintain the dynamic that Miss Evelyn cultivated. So when Miss Evelyn is not there, if she's not present, they're still adhering to the programming because they were all raised to keep each other in check. So when Tracy cut off the puppeteer strings and she did her own thing, got married, and, stayed close to her father, all the sisters ostracized her for that. I'm not saying that they were malicious towards her or they bullied her. I'm not saying all that. But Tracy was upset about what happened, obviously, and for good reason. So she was mad about something. I think Miss Evelyn, brainwashed these kids to do her job for her when she couldn't be present for whatever reason, right? You can't watch your children 24/7. Again, that is a double-edged sword, because while it does foster cohesion and collectiveness and unity, at some point that collective group becomes dysfunctional because their individuality was sacrificed as a result. So now I can't grow up and be a fully autonomous, independent human being because I'm operating within this swarm of ants, which is, I love ants. Ants are my favorite insects, not to go off course, but ants are my favorite insects for a multitude of reasons. They have a hive mind. Everybody has a role to play. Everybody knows their role within the group. And if an enemy comes and destroys their anthill or their little nest or whatever, they'll continue to build and rebuild and not make excuses and say, well, the reason why we can't build anything today is because the white man burned down Tulsa, Oklahoma 100 years ago. That's not how ants operate. So I love the way that they move and they operate. I don't know how they think, because I don't know if they have thoughts. They're just like little robots. But anyway, yeah, Miss Evelyn raised them to be like little ants. And I think that is a good thing, but it can also have its drawbacks if the ants aren't allowed to have their own separate identities, their own lives, their own husbands. Again, they were kind of forced to be closer to each other than their own families that they were creating with their children and their husbands. They've all been married. And with the exception of Tracy, they're all divorced now, right? And Tracy was the only one who stayed married to her husband. I don't think that is a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that the only person who cut the strings of the puppet master was the one who had the longest marriage. I'm not saying her marriage was perfect, but she was able to cultivate a relationship with her husband and her family outside of that cult and that group. And Miss Evelyn may have been triggered by that. And so now she could have subconsciously programmed the other sisters to excommunicate Tracy, right? So yeah, yes, it's great to have sisters who are also your friends, who can give you love and support and, understanding, but are they friends because they're sisters? If they weren't sisters, would they be friends for real? A lot of times the answer is no, because life happens. People have complex identities. People get married. They have children. They get divorced. They get sick. We saw what happened with the Kardashians when Kim and her older sister, Kourtney, got into a physical altercation on camera because they were probably sick of each other at that point. But yet again, they were forced to film together for their mother and the brand and their money and the show. So I guess this season of the Braxton family will be about them learning how to be a sisterhood after Tracy's death, because the old system, that old programming, is obsolete. Thanks to Neptune and Pisces and Pluto and Capricorn, which has pretty much forced the family to transform by letting go. They're grown now. They don't have to be in each other's lives. They don't have to get along, right? They don't need each other for survival per se. So yeah, I'm kind of happy about the sisters coming back together to film, because I think the show is speeding up the process of self-discovery and healing for them, because now they're kind of forced to interact with each other and deal with this baggage, and it's paying the bills. I'm not saying they're selling out, but if you can get paid to mend fences and to heal toxic family dynamics on national television, then I guess have at it, right? I don't have an issue with them doing that. So yeah, for that reason, I'm happy they came back. I'm going to delve more into the psychodynamics of this family in the future. We have a whole season to, dig into this. I'm not a therapist or psychologist, but I do have an innate understanding of human nature. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I look forward to reading your feedback. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll speak. See you soon.